Hey guitar friends, today we're looking at Tom Bukovac, Uncle Larry's new course, collaboration with Brett Papa. Yeah, Brett Papa is on the move again, teaming up with one of Nashville's finest. Maximum Larry is the name of the course. If you're here, I'm sure you're aware of it. We're gonna see if it's worth the pretty penny that it costs, but it is on sale at the time of recording this, so the link will be in the description. I'm not affiliated, I live in Nashville. I do want to be friends with these cats, so more on that later, hopefully. Let's dive in. I'm not going to show you any of the actual course itself. That's not mine to put out on the internet. Go to the source, buy the course. But what we will do is break down some of the concepts, and I'll talk about how it's hitting my ears, hitting my fretboard, and see if that gives you a nice little sneak preview. On your purchasing decision, here's some ill-advised afternoon green tea. Let's get ourselves acquainted. Grab your guitar, let's go. Okay, so this is pretty cool. A little warm up here, just going through the alphabet. E, F, actually he does the thumb over, so E, F, G, A, B, C, D. But try to do it fast and keep it in tune. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And you can hear some stray notes getting in there, but that's a cool little mini warm-up. Again, go to the course, get it. I'm just walking you through to show you what kind of value you have in store for you. And this is part one of the journey. There's so much to get into this. Obviously, I'm trying to get as much out of it as I can and take you along with me. Quotable moments from this video so far that you got to check out firsthand. The left hand is what you know. The right hand is who you are, assuming you're right-handed. The left hand is the watch me shred, look at how fancy my chords are, look at how much I've studied and practiced and trained my brain. The right hand is the attitude and the swagger and the groove and the pulse and all the things that you really have in the primal sense of who you are. So I'm taking that to heart. How about you? You let me know what that means to you. All right, so in this little clip, Tom is talking about the hardest chord to get in tune, even for some advanced guitar players. And because we're over squeezing, a lot of times guitarists don't realize how hard they're squeezing a chord, especially, and I've seen this a lot, when people go to play a chord that makes them a little bit nervous, they overcompensate by putting more tension into their hands. So, and he says that a lot of times the pinky note squeezes down too hard, and I'm guilty of that pretty often. I got to remember to, all of us, we end up accumulating too much tension in our fretting hand. And as much as I love this MIDI guitar, it's due for a setup, but it's always a process. You try to go lighter and lighter. One thing that I love to run by people that are having trouble with keeping their chords in tune or their double stops or whatever it is just let's take an A chord and squeeze it however hard you would normally squeeze it. And now release tension little by little, gradually, until one by one the notes go away, until they sort of extinguish like birthday candles. And then dial it back in as lightly as possible until the lights come back on these notes. And notice how little squeeze it actually requires to hold every note of that chord cleanly. And then try to ask yourself where you started at the very beginning. How many pounds per square inch were you putting down more than you needed? Try to dial it back. You never want to see the whites of your fingertips as you're holding down chords and double stops. So hey, if you dig my style and you want to learn guitar the fun way, my members and I get together 4 or 5 times a week. We go live on YouTube, unlisted, and you can talk to me in the comments, and we work on themes each week. We make progress. It's fun. My members are amazing, leaps and bounds ahead of where they were just a couple months ago. Check it all out. You get 2 weeks free, no risks, no worries, cancel anytime. The link is in the description. Come join us. I love the fact that Tom highlights the idea that when you're playing on a session, you might be playing something just really repetitive, but you got to make every note of it count, because when you're recording it and you're listening back in context, especially when you're working with great producers like he has and artists, everyone's listening with all they got. And every morsel of that part needs to lock in and stay true to the click. The beginner is just trying to get the notes out, just trying to get the chords to sound clean. So there's a lot of that focus and emphasis on the left hand. But as you get into more situations with playing in sessions and playing with other great musicians, that sense of keeping time matters so much. So let's say that simple chord progression of A minor to F and G now suddenly needs to be spelled out in time. 2, 3, 4. So that kind of stuff is where if you record yourself, listen back, and even better if you can listen and look back at it in a digital audio workstation, all these different ways that we can record audio and look at it visually and really just see where you are on the grid. That's what we're talking about. When we're talking about the grid is the metronome. It's that underlying actual grid of where the quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, and everything else land. All right, another point that he makes here is connected to the idea of groove is consistency in general. So consistency of velocity. And velocity, I know that term coming from the MIDI world as far as like when you're looking at the actual numerical value of how hard a note was hit on the piano, you can think of that in terms of the dynamics of the guitar. So if you have certain notes that are poking out, if it's sort of undulating, that might not be what the part that you're working on calls for. If it's sort of medium quiet here. And every little change in volume and string squawk will become suddenly more evident to you. And that's not an excuse to just fall apart. You will feel a bit humbled. I know this feeling, and I always feel this way when I go to record something for real. Even if it's just for my own listening, I have to try to refine it and polish it so that I get these things to gel and really sit where they need to sit. Sometimes the notes are the last thing you're worried about. It's the execution of the solid and steady final performance that's going to have groove and dynamics that are all nice and consistent. It's less sexy, but it's really, really important. All right, so another thing he's talking about right here that I love is where you pick on the string makes such a big difference to the tone. So I'm up here by the neck. If I go down near the saddle, like, especially if I have a more warm pickup there. And if you can find the sweet spot with what you're looking for without stomping on a pedal and reaching for the volume knob, sometimes the best way to get there, and that's what Tom talks about that he prefers, is controlling the tone in the fingertips. Why not, right? All right, so right here, he was just talking about using upstrokes more so than downstrokes. And that's not something I was aware of before in Tom's playing, but he plays a little part like this. With all upstrokes versus downstrokes. So I would probably do, my first instinct would be down, down, up, down, down, up. And now all up. Sorry about the intonation, but it's got this really nice kind of like sort of bounce and pop to it. And something about that, somewhat surprisingly to me, is more consistent in terms of the tone. Maybe because it's got a more kind of like crisp sort of angle. Versus down. And maybe it's just the fact that they're all the same, because down, down, up is going to sound like soft, soft, and then pop versus pop, pop, pop. Anyway, that's what I'm learning so far. It's time for us to give a shout out to our non-sponsor. They don't know me, but they will. Magic Mind, your stuff knows my brain all too well. And I think my members would highly benefit from having a discount code for Magic Mind, because we're all busy. We've got adult brains that are oversaturated and over-distracted with stuff to do. When we sit down and practice guitar, we want to be able to make some progress and have that clarity, that razor-sharp edge to our mind that we maybe used to have, and now we want to bring it back for a stint of guitar progress, make the magic happen wherever we can find it. Magic Mind, if you're out there, I'll be emailing you maybe, and we'll do some stuff, right? Okay, so what they just talked about, and this is one of those things where like I feel validated. He's talking about bending and how important it is to bend in tune, and how many people overlook it And he describes it as like the last stop to becoming a really advanced player. And one aspect that he just talked about, again, in the course that you got to go by, is keeping your fingers together. And I talk about this all the time. I joke about it. It's like keep it like a stack of hot dogs, you know, when they're all packed in together, or a bunch of buddies that are helping somebody push a truck out of the mud. It's like bring them together so you have that support system there. Then you can have more than enough bend, because a lot of times when people go to bend, their first instinct is to just send that bending finger off on its own to walk the plank and be like, and then they get into that sort of boinging sort of bend that never quite gets there, because they think that, well, okay, you got one finger per note, so it's going to be handling that. But the moment you bring these together and they got to actually make contact with that finger, then you're going to have all that control to not only get the bend that you need, whether it's a half step or a whole step, but get the vibrato as well. Oh yeah, so now he's talking about vibrato. Vibrato is right there as one of those things that gets overlooked, and people might have sort of a default autopilot version of vibrato, and that's what he talks about, is that he can tell when he hears someone that just has one way of doing vibrato, like one speed, that it's, let's say it's always fast, and it's everywhere like ketchup on meatloaf, then it's going to be sort of a giveaway that player has yet to open that door and open their ears to the choice of like no vibrato, slow vibrato, you know, subtle vibrato, or especially on a bend, to do just a bend that has no vibrato on it, has a certain kind of stark clarity to it versus that vocal quality to it that really is like the signature sound. And as you become more and more advanced, you're going to fine tune these aspects that actually become the thing that you look forward to the most in the playing. That's kind of what he talks about, is a lot of what he's thinking about as he plays is deciding to vibrato or not to vibrato. So here's the fast vibrato. Sort of angry, fast, and kind of almost over-saucing it on purpose. Sort of stinging it, right? How about the more sort of sexy, slow? Kind of drowsy, but trying to get up there and play right at that edge of the pitch. How about no vibrato? I couldn't help it. I put it on the landing, I guess. All those different varieties are the same basic notes, but totally different feelings. All right, I don't think I'm giving any major secrets away, but this is one of the riffs that I'm trying to work on that he just demonstrated in this intro portion. This is just the first masterclass of like all the many videos that are in here, but packed with so much gold. So what I'm really trying to smooth out is those transition points of bum, bum, boom, boom, boom. There's a double stop right there. And then that slide right there is really important to get all that kind of gelling and still kind of bouncing on that groove, like. And what he's talking about in this section is being able to take something like that up to full speed, so that if you can play it nice and clean at that higher tempo, then it'll still sound. This is sort of counterintuitive to oftentimes what gets taught and drilled into our heads, that you've got to practice things really slow, which is true. You got to be methodical about taking something slowly so that you can speed it up and have it be clean. But in a way, you also got to make sure that at that, whatever your highest speed limit is, that it's equally as clean as when you're playing it nice and slow, so that then when you slow it down, it's going to be like smooth and clear. And that's something I'm going to try to factor in, as well as trying to get some of the more the upstroke thing going on that I just learned in here. So a little bit faster. Just trying to straighten it out. Now going back to the swing. is shuffle. That's the kind of thing that I would probably need to spend another 10, 20, 30 minutes a day to really just gel. If you got the right hand cooking, you got that rhythm going. I always joke, it's like people are going to notice that right down to the baby that's on the shoulders of the dad that's bouncing around at the farmer's market. Like if you get the... Just keep that going. Then you could be clamming left and right on the left hand and missing notes, but like... Everyone's going to notice that pocket feeling good, right? They're also going to notice if suddenly the train is off the tracks and it feels like there's too much thinking going on. They might not know exactly why, but we all feel the rhythm first before there's any details of like, wow, that was impressive. And look at their left hand going, and wow, fireworks on the fretboard. Yeah, the engine's got to keep moving. So always train that first and foremost. And that can maybe help calm your mind when you're thinking like, oh, what's the next shape I have to learn, or the next run that I have to learn, or the next technique for moving and playing faster. It's like, man, if you could just nail something consistently that you already know the information for, but you can breathe new life into it by just locking that into a groove. Spend a day just doing that, anything related to pocket and groove, and sitting in nicely with a set of drum loops. And then see how you sound on the other side of that. Because remember, you're going to record yourself, right? And you're going to listen back to it. You're going to be washing the dish or making a sandwich and listening back to yourself the way that you listen to music, where you're not just over-analyzing it right after you record it. Let it cool by the window a bit, and then put it on and notice what you notice. Notice what grabs your ear in a good way. Notice what grabs your ear in kind of a boring way. There might be some things that you thought were really important that you actually don't find to be that compelling when you listen back to it. There also might be some things that you thought were awful when you're playing and you got in your head about that turned out to be not that bad when you listen back. And then probably most satisfying and humbling in a good way of all is that there might be things that you thought were too simple or too obvious or too easy that suddenly are your favorite part of that recording. But you have to forget a little bit of what you were thinking about when you were obsessing over it as a player, as a student, as someone who's always trying to push yourself to get better, right? And just be a listener, just be a person. Just be bopping along to it like that baby on the shoulders. Have yourself fun with it. This course, I can tell, is amazing. This is just part one. I'm diving into it and truly not trying to do anything other than highlight that I'm always trying to learn. These are fellow Nashville amazing teachers and players, and it's a crazy good deal at the time of recording this. Go grab it. Hit the link in the description. Let me know what you think of it. Yeah, and just keep having fun playing guitar. That's what we're here for. Guitars make music. People like music. So let's keep doing it. See you.